Hi guys and welcome to Horologique. Today we are going to be comparing the CADISEN 42mm or Cadisoak, like some have called it, with the new Pagani Design Royal Oak homage. And we are going to be seeing which one of these two you should be buying. And there is going to be a winner among these two, at least under my perspective. And what we are going to be judging is quality, fit, and bang per buck, mostly. So under those three categories, there's going to be clear winners. And we are going to be talking about that at the end of the video. The CADISEN was generously lent in by Ondrej from the Czech Republic, so thank you very much for allowing this comparison review to happen. Let's talk prices here. And the Pagani Design is going to cost you around 106 euros as of today, the 2nd of May 2021. And the CADISEN is going to cost you around 75 to 80. So yeah, so that's quite a large price difference, about 50%. Please do take that into account while we review these watches. Let's talk about dimensions and let's start with the CADISEN. Yeah, I find the 42mm case right there. The height is 12mm, so pretty slim. That's nice. And then the lug to lug, that's gonna be a bit difficult to measure. Let's do something, let's measure from this part of the case to this part of the case. And that is a 48.9, a 49, let's say. That is not too bad. However, you will notice that the first links of the bracelet cannot be moved. And so they will take this shape and keep it. The measure that is going to tell you how it will fit on your wrist is going to be from here to here. Even though that tapers quite a bit, let's see how much that measures. And that is a massive 56. We'll see how that wears on wrist, if the sloping case and links help with how this watch wears. Let's go to the Pagani Design now, and you've got the 40mm case, 39.8. You can say it's a 40. All right. In height, you've got 11.9, so the two watches are pretty much the same thickness. In lug to lug, it's a 46.4. And let's measure the end link to end link, the protruding end links, as you can see here. Yeah, and that is a 50. So that difference, especially on the end link to end link, is going to make the Pagani Design wear much better than the CADISEN. Let's see how they wear actually on my wrist. The CADISEN, you can see it's a large watch right away, even though it's as thin as the Pagani. But as you can see, that lug to lug, when you look it from a distance, that lug to lug distance shows, even though the fact that those end links do kind of an honest job to keep it down, as you can see, it still shows that they protrude quite a bit on my 16.5 centimeters, 6.5 inch wrist. Yeah, the Pagani wears pretty well on my wrist, as you can see, even on the thickness. Let's continue with the dimensions on the CADISEN. And let's measure the first link. You've got a measure of 27 centimeters, and that will taper down to 17.7. So the bracelet does taper quite a bit. The thing with the CADISEN is that those links are very thick. And we'll see how much this watch weighs later on. But those links are 3.6 centimeters in thickness. I think I've never seen links this thick. Let's see for the Pagani. So the bracelet on the Pagani goes from 26.7, so about the same, to 19.7. So it tapers much less. The bracelet, even though it doesn't look like it, the bracelet tapers much less than with the CADISEN. With all the links, the CADISEN weighs 179 grams. And with all the links, the Pagani Design wears 169. I was expecting a bigger difference. And the dials, they're the same layout, but of course the dial on the CADISEN has much more presence than on the Pagani Design. The first thing that pops to your eye is the fact that the colors are pretty different. On the CADISEN, you have got a royal blue, which is quite intense. And on the Pagani Design, you have a deep blue as well, but it is much more muted. On the CADISEN, even though part of the dial is shiny, it is not sunburst. As on the Pagani Design, you can see a clear sunburst there. Even looking from afar, you can set a big difference between these watches. Let's focus more closely on those patterns. So as you can see, both try to replicate the tapisserie pattern found on the original Royal Oak, but how well do they do it? Let's see that in macro. Let's first look at the CADISEN, and as you can see when you look up close, we can see that waffle relief up close, and in looking at it, you can see that the top of the squares has no definite pattern on it. However, you can see a clear hobnail pattern, and that is pretty well done, even looked up close. That is quite a lot of complexity for a watch at this price point. On the Pagani Design, however, you can see that the reverse approach has been taken here. First of all, the squares are much larger, leaving less space between the squares, leaving less space between themselves. There's a circular pattern on the top of those large squares, like in the original. However, note that there's no parent pattern between those squares. In terms of fidelity to the original design, I would say they both do it halfway, with the CADISEN decorating in between the raised squares and the Pagani Design decorating on top of those squares. The quality of the hand, I would say it's about the same. Here you can see first the Pagani Design with nice polishing on the hands, but a bit of dust particles on them, that being quite normal and that being totally invisible to the naked eye. The hands on the CADISEN look pretty much the same, but dare I say with even a little bit less particles when looked up close. But once again, once you look to the naked eye, they are virtually invisible. The indices on the Pagani are well raised, they're shiny, and they're pretty well refined, with again very little particles on them. On the CADISEN, it's about the same, with those metallic parts again being a little bit thicker in relation to the whole watch. So on the dial department, for me there is no clear winner. I would lean towards the Pagani Design because of that circular pattern, which for me makes it better looking, and because of those hands and indices that are a little bit more elegant. The CADISEN takes a whole different approach, with a more brutish design of the dial, with those hands and indices being larger, and a lance tip on the second hand that gives it a different flair. What is very apparent, however, is that the hands, at least the hour and the second hand, are replicating exactly the same shape as the hands on the original Royal Oak. However, the hands on the CADISEN are a bit bigger, and that more toolish, brutish approach is followed when you look at the bezel screws. Here CADISEN have taken a different approach and have made some very original screws. Maybe there's a name for them. If you know it, please let me know in the comments. The Pagani Design takes a much classic approach, with the heads of those screws being just round heads. The difference here with the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak is that in the Audemars Piguet, the heads of those screws are also octagonal, and here Pagani Design have not replicated that. And let's see the crystals on these watches. Let's see if they are sapphire. Let's start with the Pagani. Yeah, that looks like sapphire. And let's continue with the CADISEN. Yeah, same thing, that looks as sapphire too. I believe there's a bit of anti-reflective coating on the Pagani Design, and there's absolutely none on the CADISEN, which is normal given the price. Let's talk about one of the most important features of a Royal Oak, and that is the bezel. As for the octagonal bezel, the companies have taken a very different approach here. And let me show you first the bezel of the actual Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. And as you can see, it is quite hard to notice, but the bezel is round itself on the uppermost part, and then it is in the slopes going down that the actual octagon form is given. And it will be the same case with the CADISEN here. As you can see, inside it is round, and then the octagon, the octagonal case, is made with the chamfers of the bezel. The bezel is then, it then has another surface that continues the octagon and is perpendicular to the front of the case. Pagani Design have taken a much more complex approach here. You have the same principle at the inner surround of the bezel, and then the bevels go in different directions. The octagon is not made here. It is only one flat surface, which is round. It is on the second part of the bezel that the octagon will be made. But it is not an actual octagon. You actually have 16 surfaces here instead of 8. And I believe that it is pretty nice to see it this way. And Pagani Design have really taken things to another level by, well, I'm gonna get a lot of flack here, but by pretty much outdoing even Audemars Piguet. Please don't kill me. But at least they have tried to do something a little bit different here. The case itself, however, is a pure octagon, so that has not changed there at all. And it is the same thing, of course, with the CADISEN. You've got the actual octagon, let's say on the bezel with the brushing on top of the bezel. As I said in the Pagani Design review, in my unit, that brushing is twisted to the left by about a 5-degree angle. However, Pagani Design have seen that video and they said they would take action to correct it. In fact, they sent me a version with the correct alignment, which I waited for this review, but it hasn't arrived yet. And as I promised to make the review this weekend, well, I had to stick to this unit. But for now, let's not take that into account in the final evaluation of this watch. As for the CADISEN, it's a bit coarser than the one on the Pagani Design, as you can see. And this is something else that changes. You've got a cut section at the angle of the case, and that is made so it can meet the form of the integrated bracelet. Here, Pagani Design takes a much more typical approach. Once you go on the flat surface, then you've got a bevel which goes all the way through the case, and then you go into the sides, and then you've got another bevel there. How about the brushing quality? Here the brushing quality is pretty similar on both. However, as you can see, there's a difference in the brushing. The Pagani Design has a horizontal brushing in keeping with the original Audemars Piguet, and it is pretty well done. It is a bit coarse, but it is not too bad, not like with their Black Bay 58 homage. It's okay, let's say. However, the CADISEN has, as you can see, the brushing is vertical on the sides of the watch, and that for me works in detriment of the watch because it makes it look thicker. Let's talk about the crowns. The crown on the Pagani Design is pretty complex. Again, Pagani Design complicated things. You might like it or you might not. I think it's pretty nice that they have, so I'm going to talk about it. As you can see on the Pagani Design, the inner part of the crown, the biggest part of the crown, is round, and the outer part of the crown is an octagon. So instead of making a full octagon like the original model, they have gone into the trouble of making these in two parts. Well, you might like it, you might not. So CADISEN have not bothered here. That is one of the negative aspects, I believe, of the CADISEN. They have not tried to give us an octagon crown or anything. They have just put any crown in there. We cannot blame them as well at the price of this timepiece. And as for the cases, I would say that the nicer quality goes to Pagani Design, definitely. More attention to details, more features, higher complexity on the finishing, better finishing. Yeah, definitely the case goes to Pagani Design. Let's now discuss another very important part of a Royal Oak, and those are the bracelets. Let's start by the shape. As you can see, none of these bracelets have gone into the trouble of trying to replicate the complex design of the original. Instead, they have taken quite different approaches from the original. Pagani Design have done something resembling a Nautilus bracelet. CADISEN have, again, simplified things and gone with, we can even try and call this an oyster bracelet because it's supposed to be a 3-link bracelet. Of course, it is much more angular, much thicker, but it is still replicating a 3-link bracelet. And from what I see, these appear to be 3 real links. Yes, they are 3 real links. So 1, 2, and 3. As for the Pagani Design, as I was telling you, these are H links, very much like the Nautilus offers. The brushing is vertical and is continued from the case, and the chamfered from the case is also continued on the bracelet. So that is very nice. The bracelet is not bad at all. It is signed Pagani Design and it opens with the butterfly clasp. That is, of course, like the original, so there's nothing they could do here. So this bracelet would be actually pretty good if it wasn't for a big flaw, and maybe you noticed it, and it's the fact that this first link that attaches to the bracelet juts out quite a bit. I don't know if it is really visible here, but it juts out, yes, there you can see it. It juts out very much, too much, I would say, hurting the line of this watch. And that is really a pity, because with a bracelet that follows the line, this would have been a much better option. Yeah, as you can see there, you can even feel it very much with your finger. Maybe Pagani Design can take these into account and correct. I really think they should correct this issue right away. As for CADISEN, when we checked the case, we saw there was this little part here, this little bevel here, and that is so visually it will be more in line, literally speaking, with the bracelet. And as you can see, the transition from the case to the bracelet is much more flawless. There's no jutting parts, and this looks like a much more thought after idea. So as I said in the intro, there's going to be a winner here, and there is a winner under my perspective. And in terms of quality, I believe that it's a very close race, but I will give it to the Pagani Design. In terms of bang per buck, I have to give it to the CADISEN. The quality is almost equal, it has the same movement. In terms of fit and finish, and this might be the most personal of them all, I have to give it to the Pagani Design as well. For my small wrist, this fits much better than the CADISEN. If the CADISEN came in a 40, even lower, and if they did something with that protruding first link, it's a full first link that protrudes, I might be tempted to change, but as it is for now, for these two, the clear winner in terms of fit is the Pagani Design. So overall, that makes two categories, one for the Pagani Design and one for the CADISEN. So under my perspective, it's a win for the Pagani Design. However, it's a close win, and if the CADISEN fits you, if you got the wrist for it, I would go for the CADISEN. For me, the Pagani Design wins, but it's a matter of how it fits to my wrist mostly. So that's been the video, guys. Feel totally free to disagree with me. This is my personal opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I have put links to both these watches on the description below, so if you're willing to get one of those, don't hesitate to use those links. That's been all for me. Thank you very much for having watched the video. If you haven't watched the full review of the Pagani Design, I'm gonna leave a link here or here. I never know. Here? No, here. Okay, there you go. I'm gonna leave a link here so you can go and check that. Thank you very much, and I'll be seeing you very soon on that video.